Welcome to the RJLT Economics. In this podcast, I discuss why China's young people are losing competitiveness. I want to first apologize if there are some background noise, like very strong, very obtrusive background noise, because I think they are doing some work outside. There is nothing I can do about it. But I want to make this recording now because I just recently realized, not noticed in fact, that there's been a ratcheting up of censorship in China. And this has prompted me to perhaps to question the direction that the country and the society in general is going. And I think it is really the contributing factor, in fact, perhaps the deciding factor that has led to a decline in competitiveness among the young in China. But nevertheless, let's divide this podcast in two steps. I want to develop it in two steps. First, I want to discuss briefly why Chinese people have been somewhat uncompetitive, or at least in many ways uncompetitive on the international stage. And then I want to discuss specifically why the younger generation are getting worse. Right. So first, let's start about what has always been the case. I have 3 points that I want to point out. First, it is that in the recent centuries, I think, almost close to 2 centuries, China has become, in fact, a lot more than two centuries. The Chinese civilization has gradually evolved to be a narrow-minded culture. And I would say before 2 centuries, people were narrow-minded, but they were arrogant. They thought that the Chinese culture was the greatest. And in the recent century, they are narrow-minded. The Chinese are narrow-minded, but at the same time, there is a severe lack of confidence in its culture. And the result is that there are a lot of topics, a lot of discussions that cannot be made publicly because people in power just simply lack the confidence to have this type of public discussion. They would prefer that nobody discusses these issues, and of course that inevitably exacerbates the underlying problem and eventually leads to slower progress, if not great leap backwards. That's number one. And number two, there is also an education system that is incompatible with creating incompatible with developing creative talents that are essential for the 21st century. They are good at producing or replicating decent workers, engineers that are able to mass produce certain products that have been already developed by others, but they are not that great at developing new ideas, at identifying new ideas, because the education system discourages creativity. It punishes creativity. It punishes new ways to solve old problems. It instills a repetitive way of thinking to the students from a very young age, and this means that the Chinese overall today are not innovative. They are not creative, and there is this saying, I want to say it, I don't know if there are other people who have said it, which is that to think that the Chinese can overtake, say the Americans technologically is impossible, because even though the Chinese are very effective at making copies of American ideas and perhaps at developing it further and refining it, they are not great at coming up with ideas and developing these ideas. So if the counterfactual is that if China is more advanced than America technologically, then China will have nowhere to copy, and that means that it will have to fall behind. So it cannot overtake the Americans, at least now, unless the education system is completely revamped. So that's the second thing. And the third thing, there is also a culture of infighting. I think in China, people like to refer to it as involution. I think that is an abuse of this term. It's not necessarily involution or evolution, revolution. It is just a culture of infighting. And this has been, I think, instilled from the education system. People need to compete with each other, and they want to, from a very young age, to obtain higher scores. And these higher scores are tied ostensibly or theoretically, or at least what has been told to the young students, pupils, that is tied to their future earnings, how big an apartment they can buy, whether they can get married and have children, etc. But of course, this is all complete nonsense, because people who are the richest in China are hardly educated, and people who are the best educated tend to be just wage earners. And this is no different than a lot of other places. And this partly, I think, is attributable to the education system, because people who succeed in the educational system inevitably fails in the society, because they have been adapted to this way of thinking. The very few who have become rich and successful are those who failed. They failed in the education system not because they are stupid. They failed in that system because they are very smart, but at the same time they're so creative and so courageous, or they can think of out of the box. That's the educational system has no place for them. That's the reason, right? But that's where the foundation, the root of infighting has been planted. The seeds of infighting has been planted in the educational system. But through the employment system and through all kinds of the business field in general, it is a lot of infighting. In fact, I talked to some companies, and there is a company, for example, that makes very interesting robotics. They are able to do it at a cost advantage, significant cost advantage, compared to the Swedish and American alternatives. But what they want to do, instead of marketing their products internationally, what they want to do is first to solidify the market in China. They think that this is a less risky approach. Well, it is also the approach that, if you know, the Kuomintang took in the Second World War. So instead of fighting the Japanese, what they wanted to do is to solidify their control of China, even though the area that remained for them to take control of kept shrinking. So that's a culture of infighting that goes from the educational system to the business and politics. And I think this is something that really needs to be eradicated before China could become a world leading power. It is due to its large population and the overall size of its economy. It is a world power, but it cannot be a leading power. At least the number one power, it cannot be. Even though it has these quantities, it lacks quality. And in fact, the quality in there is oftentimes contradictory within its culture. So that's the first part of today's podcast. And then let's move on to the second part, the censorship. I think that that censorship is really bad, especially for young people. You know, for people of my age, people who are older, it does not really matter as much. But people who are of the formative years, who are in their formative years, of 18, 16 to 25, 26, in this period, when they live under a period of strong censorship, what happens are three things. First, they cannot have intelligent discussions of key issues like the civil liberties, like civil responsibility, like human rights, like economics, politics, geopolitics, foreign relations, etc. They cannot talk about these things. The only thing that they can talk about is who makes better videos on TikTok, who has developed a new smartphone app, and who have been playing games so very well. And this inevitably stupefies the population. And when you have a stupid workforce, what you're going to get is a stupid result. That is very unfortunate. Instead, what I would say that a great nation could only continue to prosper when their young people can have free discussions on intelligent issues. So unfortunate. This is unfortunate. This is number one. And number two, I think there is a strong, antipathy to the understanding of economics. There is an obsession with the notion that the Chinese government, because it is quote unquote socialist or with Chinese characteristics or whatever nonsense, that the government is so strong that it can surpass, outpower or overpower any economic principles. Such is never the case. There is no power that can overcome the economic principles, not on this earth, not in human societies. You can see the Soviet Union couldn't do it, and China's previous dynasties couldn't do it. So that basically means that whether it's socialism or it is Chinese characteristics, nobody can overlook the economic principles. But there is this antipathy to the understanding of economics. People even think that the understanding of economics is unnecessary. People like to, in fact, the country in general, when they want to have quote unquote experts that go to work in China, they want engineers essentially to go to China to essentially copy what has been done abroad, what has been developed abroad. That's what they really want. They don't want people who can be good managers of the economy. Partly because the people who are in power in China are not managing the economy successfully or responsibly. In fact, there has been great progress, undeniable progress in the economic development of the nation, but that is best said. It is in spite of the mismanagement of the Chinese government, not because of. That is due to the diligence, of the Chinese people. I think besides diligence, I can't think of a lot more. I guess besides diligence, you can say also low labor cost and oversupply of labor. I guess those could also be mentioned as contributing factors to the tremendous economic growth in China. But overall, it is certainly not because the Chinese government managed so very well. I'm not saying that other governments are managing their economy so well. The Indians, for example, have done an even poorer job, and I think their government should be ashamed of calling themselves a democracy, being so corrupt and inept in managing the economy and raising the living standards of the population. So nevertheless, I think that's the second point I want to make. And finally, I think there is simply no understanding of civil responsibility in China among the young people. People think that the government, being so omnipresent, being so powerful and omnipotent, that it is almost godlike, that the government would take care of things, and people don't think that they themselves are responsible for the betterment of the society. And overall, under these circumstances, what you have is a younger generation obsessed with very stupid smartphone applications and games, but have a weak understanding of everything that is important. They don't understand what life is about. They think it's about making money. They don't think much about how the economy functions or what they could do themselves to make the society a better place. And with this combination, I am afraid to say that China, as an economic power, it could, in quantity, surpass America in economics. It could surpass, of course, every other trading blocs, major trading nations, become the most mercantile, and I think it already is. But China cannot be, under these circumstances, it cannot be a civilizational power that exports its civilization and exports its values. Now, a lot of people who may say that exporting value is a fool's errand, but I think exporting values a la Americana, that is a fool's errand. Namely, that you go to do a regime change, etc. But exporting values such as freedom, such as liberty, such as civil responsibility, these are great values that can be exported through influence, right? I think there are still some good ways to exporting civilization influence, and I think China is very far from going there. Can it change? I don't think it can change in the next few decades. I'm very sorry to say this, and I think with the collapse of Britain, of the British Empire, I'm very sorry to say this. Yesterday when I made the recording on Britain, I did not think that the Queen would have died within just hours after of my recording. But that is a really sad event. I'm afraid that the mood in Britain will be very dark indeed this summer, and the mood across Europe could be very dark. And this means that there is a recession, receding, let's say, because I don't want to, how to say, anyway, let me just rephrase it. Because the Western civilization is receding, it means that there is going to be very little in terms of leadership in value, in principles. And that could give a lot of the tin pot dictators a shot of courage, so that they could go out and do a lot of things that really is counter against the values that a lot of us, I think people who listen to me and people who manage to find this podcast and listen to this part, I think those are people who value, who appreciate, who treasure certain values. Anyway, I'm sorry about the noise outside. I think there is they continue to work, and I guess it's time for me to shut up. So thank you very much for listening, and have a great day.